Hello everyone, welcome back to Spar&Brawl. My name is Cam Company.
And I'm Sam.
So I got a message from Telegram 2 days ago that really caught my attention. So I want to use that to talk about, what the story is with Telegram and then expand it to just a general conversation about social media and discuss the merits of the takes by people such as Glenn Greenwald, Kyle Kulinski, Katie Halper had a interesting guest. So we'll get into that. But before that, so I got a text message by Telegram about.
And I like to, before we get into the story, I like to point out that I was the one who prompted you to download Telegram again. So in a way, it's really my story. I know you brought this up, but
True, true, thank you. Well, I guess you missed this text by them, or maybe you didn't receive it. But it seems like they've sent this text out to everyone, and they said
yeah,
that in just. Did you receive it?
yeah, I got
Okay.
it. I got it. And I have two SIM cards, so it's got went for everyone, I think.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it seems so. So they announced that in just 72 hours, they got 25 million new users, bringing their total number of users to 500 million. So just to put that into context, WhatsApp has 2 billion users. So really not bad by Telegram. And for those of you who don't know, Telegram is pretty much like WhatsApp. It's its Russian competitor. You can say it was founded by a Russian entrepreneur, and it really doesn't have all the privacy and user restrictions that have come with WhatsApp these days. That's one of the main differences between them. Did you want to say something,
Uh,
Sam? Yeah.
yeah, I like to add that Telegram is a far superior application in comparison to WhatsApp. It allows you know, it just there are so many more functionalities, and this includes, by the way, it's it's browser and a computer application as well. So it's a far, and I'll get into why I mention this right now, but it's a far better and far, according to most articles I read, far more secure in terms of privacy app.
Yeah, exactly. No, his functionality, as you're right, is much more. I mean, you can send pretty much unlimited size for when it comes to a file. And yeah, and its privacy and everything is really one of the main reasons, I guess, it's getting all this recognition. But yeah, so why did Telegram suddenly get this many users in 72 hours? Well, it's because WhatsApp sent a notification to all of its users, forcing them to accept its privacy policy, which includes terms to share data with Facebook. So the update to terms and service, which comes into effect on the 8th of February, does not apply to users in the UK and Europe, but has led to significant criticisms from users, privacy advocates, and competitors. So WhatsApp will specifically force users to agree to its new privacy policy within the next months, or else they will lose access to the app. So I think this message went out to everybody in the US. Here they're saying that it didn't go out to people in Europe and also in the UK. So I wonder if it went out to users, let's say in Asia or Australia or just the United States. I'm not sure. And of course, at the same
What
time, yeah,
was this message emailed or like
no,
it went to
saying
their account?
notification. I think WhatsApp sent a notification. I've never received a
I
message by WhatsApp, so I haven't
Yeah,
seen them do that. But maybe in the
that's
US, they do that, or maybe it pops up somewhere. I'm not sure, yeah, exactly where. But yeah,
that's the
so
thing.
as
Yeah.
a result to this, people have also left to other platforms such as Signal, but of course, Telegram is the biggest one. And the Russian founder of Telegram, Pavel Durov, took this opportunity to throw a few jabs at WhatsApp, saying that people no longer want to exchange their privacy for free services. They no longer want to be held hostage by tech monopolies that seem to think that they can get away with anything as long as their apps have a critical mass of users. Adding that since the launch of Telegram in 2013, it hasn't disclosed a single bit of our users' private data to third parties. So I found this to be interesting also because of, what's going on in the past week with social media after, the insurrection at Capitol Hill. And I've seen that the attacks on Telegram have also started in the US press. So Politico ran an article with the headline, Telegram tries and fails to remove extremist content. So now this is super shocking. Not really. And it's based on a review by Politico of the network. Now they don't they
No,
don't they have any
really.
link. Yeah, they don't have any link to how they
No, no.
reviewed it.
Who made Politico the fucking prosecutor of what's extremism? Anyway.
Anyway, and it doesn't even seem that there's any proper investigation. I couldn't link to when they said that in the article. So they didn't even like publish like a few pages on the report. And they say that of course X, Y, and group, which are known to be extremists, they have groups there. Which kind of brings me to my first point about this, which is no matter how hard you try, let's forget about the merits of banning people and if, it has unfortunate consequences afterwards. Let's put that all aside. Just one thing you need to understand is that you will never be able to get rid of everything that's bad, all the bad content on any of these social media platforms. I literally don't think that is possible. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. It kind of
No.
Yeah.
I think even if it's possible, then you create a 1984 kind of world, don't you?
Yeah, and funny enough, in this Political article, they just waited until the last paragraph to say something worthwhile. And the last paragraph, they quote the co-founder of First Draft News, a non-profit that works with media organization to combat online disinformation. And they said that deplatforming won't make this stuff go away. There will always still be spaces where people can go to coordinate these type of activities. So you will never be able to get rid of really all of this on a platform. It reminds me of in doping and sports, there is this attempt to also, policing more, like, athletes that are part of the UFC or the Olympics, they use the same system, and pretty much someone can show up at their houses at any time to check to take their blood test, right? And even with this, there is doping, and some people are arguing that you will never get rid of doping in this way. You can make all these people lose all their privacy and all their rights, and then there will still be doping. Unless you're monitoring them 24/7, there's no way of getting rid of this problem in this way. And it's the same thing. Like, I'm not saying that Facebook and Instagram shouldn't try to combat, horrible, damaging things that even under law they're illegal, but just know that you will never get rid of it. So yes, Political, Telegram, maybe it tries, maybe it doesn't, but regardless, there will be extremist content on all these platforms. This is kind of my first point. And the second one relates to this, which is, let's not assume that all our problems have to do with social media. 9/11 happened before Mark Zuckerberg probably graduated high school. I'm not sure.
No.
White supremacy existed before there was this thing called World War II and Hitler and all this. And then after that, we can also talk about the main argument that's made, which is the slippery slope argument that, you ban Trump and then who. But yeah, enough talking by me, Sam. What do you think?
I loved how you put Hitler and stuff like that. The fascism.
Yeah. Well, they managed to do it without social media somehow. So
that's the thing, it's there is they talk about escalation in crime. It's the same thing in doping. It's the same thing in social media. You create tests that recognizes this drug, they create a new drug. You bring police gets guns, they get automatic guns. So unless you address the underlying problem, this is just this is, I really don't see any difference between people who will try to attack free speech, even bad speech, but that's the point of free speech, between them and people who want to burn books, to be honest. Let me just give you some historical stuff about Telegram and WhatsApp as well. You mentioned that Telegram guy Pavel Durov, he made some comments at WhatsApp. He has done that before as well. I remember last year when Jeff Bezos' account was apparently hacked by Saudi Arabian intelligence officers and his private pictures were leaked and stuff. He put out a tweet or something saying that if he had used Telegram, his account would have never been hacked. and because we are much more secure. And even you don't have to be a tech expert, but WhatsApp is owned by who? By Facebook. So it's quite clear, that WhatsApp is not as secure. And that Pavel Durov guy, he's a bit of an eccentric. He's been talking about, I don't know if you ever watched that TV show Silicon Valley, HBO comedy show. It's a great show, and one of the concepts in that is the guy is trying to bring about, I don't understand tech at all, but a decentralized internet. So somehow all the information, all the stuff is sort of spread across users, so no single company can control access or can become a monopoly. This is obviously I'm giving a very simple explanation, but that guy Pavel Durov of Telegram, he was talking about similar things as well. So this is something that is at least theoretically possible, apparently. And before he had Telegram, he had a different app, a messaging app, which was the most popular messaging app in Russia, and it may still be. Then Russian government basically forced him to, sell them a controlling share. Then he created Telegram, and it became very popular. And then they wanted him to give more data from users from that and stuff. So he left Russia and moved to Germany so he can, keep his independence, basically.
Oh wow, that's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a fascinating, eccentric guy, and Telegram has been dealing with, the reason why I say Telegram is much better, because I think WhatsApp and Facebook, they realize they have an inferior product. And all of this talk about extremism, about Russiagate, all of this which they have tried to implicate Telegram in, all of it is really a business strategy to avoid losing their market share to a far, far superior product. As somebody who has to use a lot of online apps for my daytime, for my day job, basically, it's just crazy how much better it is. It's something that can actually replace even emails in some ways because of the files you can transfer, the size of the files. So I think it's the reality, underlying reason why they write all these articles is just because, they know that their product is inferior, so they're trying to smear Telegram, basically.
No, 100%. It is a much better product. You're absolutely right. And it also has the group feature, which WhatsApp has, but this way of running businesses feature. And channel feature that it has. But yeah, exactly. But just coming back to some of the other arguments that I was making and we're talking about, is that just to not be, I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything to combat, extremism and all this on your platforms, but don't be disillusioned that you're going to get rid of all of this.
To be honest, I don't think the companies should do. We're going to talk about this later as well. But for example, you can use your telephone, or you can use your telegraph. I suppose you can use that for notorious and evil acts, right? But police, for example, probably one of the greatest TV shows ever made, The Wire. It's all about the police getting, for example, getting warrants from judges to be able to spy on you. So you shouldn't just, you shouldn't just say, okay, they use telephone for evil stuff, so let's just stop using telephones as a whole. That doesn't make sense to me anyway.
No, 100%. And I guess that, whenever it's like, it's against someone like Donald Trump. So even, it's not like the hill you want to die on, arguing your last argument is like, no Twitter, please have Donald Trump on it. When it's like someone that despicable and shit, you're like, sure. But unfortunately, it will never just be him. They pointed out, Glenn Greenwald points out, Kai Kulinski pulls out that the slippery slope is not an argument about the future. It actually does happen. And Twitter does remove messages all the time. And no matter how smart you think computers are, which they are extremely smart, really when it comes to like text and understanding, messages and the nuance of messages, I think they're really not good at that. I mean, if they were...
the problem is not that computers or their algorithms can't, for example, recognize irony, which is that's a huge problem. But the real problem is that the fact that you can have somebody like what's the name of the Twitter guy? I forget. Or let's say the Facebook guy, Mark Zuckerberg. Somebody like that who he may be a great guy, he may be an extremely intelligent person, but the question is, should one person or one company even be allowed to, censor basically certain people or certain speech or certain ideas? That's the biggest issue. I mean, of course, robots are obviously they can. For example, you put anything to do with war in Russiagate, you demonetize or
Yeah.
something like that. That's a huge problem, but the bigger one, I think, is the censorship issue. I think.
No, 100% the censorship issue. But what I mean, I think if Facebook wants to censor anybody, like sure, you're a private company and go do whatever you want. But it's like public officials and the public like also agreeing with that and telling them no, go do that and thinking that that's the solution. I mean that really elevates the problem for me, because technically speaking, I don't know, Facebook can say tomorrow that you can only talk about baseball on our platform and that's it. And sure, I mean, everybody will just like leave the platform, so they won't do that. But I mean, right now, politicians and public officials are urging this company, which has a monopoly over pretty much all communication, to be the ones who control what should be said and what shouldn't be said, and censoring arguments.
Exactly. That's
so. Let's talk about a few solutions. What do you think could be solutions? So, I mean, I think one thing is obvious, and it comes to the antitrust one, and this is like clearly Facebook buying Instagram was one thing, but I feel like when they bought WhatsApp, that was just next level.
To be completely honest, I don't have a problem. Like, I don't think you should break them up or anything like that, because I don't think such a central way of communicating should be public. Like, not public, should be state-owned, basically. Mm-hmm. Or at least highly state regulated, as in not regulated, mm-hmm. as in say what, or say like telephone lines, or like roads, or like gas, water, electricity. There are private companies that are contractors that work for government or whatever, but they're not. Like, this is pretty much
what
for
should
modern
the public
life.
utilize? What should be made public? Because now thinking about it, there's the layer of the internet, so you can say, okay, the internet is public and anybody can go on the internet. But then there are things that are built on top of the internet, right? So it's like the platform, like social media, Facebook is built on top of that. But you can't just keep on. I don't know. Does that logic apply to like the social media platforms?
I mean,
you get kind of what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. I think you can. That used to happen. For example, the East India company that was, colonizing India was first a private company, then government bought the shares, and then, So I think basically government should say at this point, for example, Facebook has reached the level that is kind of pretty much like everybody has an account and they use it for communication. It's kind of like a telephone. So, we take that over pretty much.
Yeah, it's a bit of a reactionary response though. Like, it would be good if there was something already in place. I guess that's always been the case. Yeah, if you become too big of a monopoly and then, you're so much of a public tool.
Like, first electric grids were like private, and then government kind of sees the point of it and takes over. So I think there should be obviously, I mean, we are just obviously just a spitball, this is not very thought through, but I think there should be maybe a commission or something, and then they decide that there should be a minimum access of, every citizen should have, let's say, at least this much speed of internet access to this much.
I mean, I see the argument with the internet.
And there should be a free like version of WhatsApp or Facebook, or let's say applications that allow you to transfer money, like a free version of the most commonly used apps for people to use.
Yeah, I see that. I understand that.
So, I mean, what do you suggest as a solution? What did anything come to your mind?
I mean, one thing, like I just mentioned, is the one I think them being able to buy WhatsApp was it was extra outrageous because it was so close to, just being pretty much like a telephone and like just people's contact in that way, not really even a social media platform. So them being able to buy that, which is a kind of different kind of business, WhatsApp from Facebook, and then being to integrate them, that is just beyond, that is like the most ridiculous thing. So I think they have to at least be broken up in that part. But with the argument of the public utility, okay, so I think that's a really good idea with the internet. I just don't see how you can secure all these other services to be a public version. I find that to be a bit more challenging. And now, so let me tell you what this guest, this expert man by the name of Zephyr Teachout, what she recommended on Katie Halper's show and basically how I understood it. So she kind of says that it should be like the telephone. And okay, so she's not talking about the internet here. She's talking specifically about social media platforms and the problem of extremism on social media platforms, right? This is like really the issue where she starts with. So she says, why don't we make it like telephone and that model? So people have to pay $1 to $15, let's say, dollars per month or whatever. And then Facebook will not be able to put target advertising. So sure, that part is good. But then she says, then there won't be that business model where Facebook tries to just push to people whatever they think they would like more. And a lot of time what they would like more is, content that will be very problematic, divisive, and all of this, right? But I don't see how her solution fixes that from based on what I understood, because Facebook will still want to, okay, Facebook, sure, now you're paying $1 to $15, they accept, we don't do any advertising, sure. But look at Instagram, its whole second part where it suggests for you to what to watch, none of these are paid. So I don't see why they would stop doing that, because they would still want their platform to be extremely engaging so people can subscribe and people will find whatever twisted or whatever their ideology and whatever it takes them. So I didn't understand how, based on my understanding of her solution, how that necessarily addresses the issue of extremism and, problematic content on social media.
I mean, look, I think the problem has been very, very much exaggerated. The problem of extremism
100%.
Online and all that. So, but I think the thing they argue is that there is an algorithm that rewards extremist takes and extremist views. As in, the more negative you are, the more engaging you are, and therefore the problem is that algorithm that, for example, suggests videos that tend to want to rile up the people, right? That's the problem, they say. I think, to be honest, actually, I think her suggestion is pretty good, because what you have in UK, for example, you have a license fee for BBC, and everybody pays a license fee, and then that's how BBC is funded. That way, there are obvious problems within the system, but that way, BBC's, that way, if, for example, let's say we have a Twitter that is funded through $2 license fees by American citizens, then their algorithm has to be only based on relevance rather than an algorithm that benefits them in one way or another in terms of engagement or in terms of, right? So I think that's not a bad solution, to be honest. Again, I don't think it's such a big problem right now, extremism online, because if you don't address the underlying issues, they'll just, go somewhere else. But that's not a bad idea in terms of like how you can make it public without, having government censoring it and all that.
I mean, 100% the problem has been blown out of proportion, and we can talk a bit more after at the end about the Capitol Hill storming and the impeachment, and it is not the underlying issue. And just like earlier on, the person that I quoted, the expert, she said that deplatforming is not the thing because there's so many platforms or whatever, then you just go somewhere else. and there's an underlying issue that you need to address. But I still don't understand how her solution addresses that, because like you said, they still have the algorithm. So what would be relevance? Relevance to some people would be pushing kind of extremism. I mean, Twitter can't be like, okay, now you're giving me $2, now here's this product. No, they're still gonna have to at least be 2 or 3 other competitors, so they need to make sure that they're giving people what they want, what they came for on this channel. So that's why I don't understand with the way that social media works, how this solution, which I get how with the BBC it works, that makes sense. But given on social media, you come and you find whatever you want. On BBC, you come and you find whatever the program of the hour is. So I just find that these differences...
I think, I don't know. We have to look at the exact data regarding what percentage of YouTube views are from suggested videos, from playlists, from all that. But yeah, I mean, it's not the biggest issue. I think the censorship one is a bigger issue than extremism one. And I think the extremism one is kind of, again, these ideas remind me of the people who used to say, for example, books are the work of the devil and the print is the work of the devil. You know what I mean? This is ridiculous. Like, you should focus on the underlying issues, not the method that the message is being, carried over around. So, but again, I do think making them kind of like BBC, let's say Facebook, WhatsApp, that type of thing, making their funding like BBC, that could be a great idea, I think.
I see. I can see how it can improve, although I don't quite understand how it addresses that underlying issue. And if somebody else has listened to Zephyr teach out on Katie Halper's show, please let us know in the comments what I missed, everything. I tried to listen to it twice.
It won't address the underlying issue she was going to
that's for sure, yeah.
But necessarily, I understand what you're saying. Like, if you're looking for that, you'll find that maybe it reduces your chances of randomly seeing some really misinformed like Alex Jones rant or something. That's what it does.
Well, Alex Jones is against QAnon now. Kyle Kulinski did a little video. Well, I'm not too sure how you can tell what he's against from there, but no, I'm joking, because he just gets really pissed off and he cuts it off on the guy who is a QAnon guy.
That caller specifically.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. That was funny. But okay, I don't know if you have anything more about censorship and all this, or if you want to transition a bit about, if you have any thoughts about impeachment or the Capitol Hill storming, just to wrap up this conversation, because it all re-emerge from there, although the whole social media conversation has been a big thing with Trump.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, mainstream media or traditional media outlets like Guardian, CNN, print TV, they are looking for any reason to basically destroy their main competitor, the online space. But I doubt they're going to succeed, to be honest, because it's just the technologically superior method of conveying information. But yeah, again, I think it's, and they prefer to talk about cosmetics than underlying issues, because, if you start talking about the economic problems, the problem that, for example, why certain group of people, specifically certain group of people within a society feel so confident that they can storm the parliament without any reaction from the police, while another group, black people, they if they move suddenly, they might get shot. So they want to avoid talking about those issues because those issues are hard to solve. So on the cosmetics.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I just had a few thoughts about the Capitol Hill storming, so I just wanted to go over them too and get your thoughts. So first, I heard a little about this in the beginning, but then they stopped, and there was the comparison between the people who marched on Capitol Hill and the Black Lives Matter protests that were going on earlier on, and being like, oh, there was some violence there, why didn't you say anything about blah? I mean, I think this is a complete bullshit, false comparison. I mean, don't condone the elements of the Black Lives Matters that turned violent and, you know, destroyed stuff. Yes, okay, that part I'm gonna. But the particular part of the storming of the Capitol Hill and the issues that they were arriving there with, the conspiracies that they were arriving there, compared to a national movement of the Black Lives Matter that was going on everywhere, protests, and some elements did, yes, do violent stuff. I just found that comparing these two was just nonsense. They're completely different in so many ways.
Yeah. I mean, the motives behind them are so different. Like, in my view, at least, one had pretty good, pretty. I don't condone their actions, but they had reasonable motives. The second group, I mean, Jesus Christ, you know. But
exactly, and they had they had revolutionary ambitions and all this. Not that there's anything wrong with revolutionary ambitions if they come from a bit less of a twisted place. But yeah.
No, but I would give them that, though. If Black Lives Matter actually wants to change something, they should do the same. They should go and try to say, that's how you really, scare the shit out of people. But my general take on the riots was that, to be honest, I know it's a bit bad to say, but I was kind of happy that happened, in a way that, this, because a couple of years ago, I don't know if you recall, there was a terrorist attack on Iranian parliament, where ISIS people walked in, and the social media Americans, and especially Iranian Americans, to be honest, oh, look, well, pathetic security, we don't have any security, oh, what a typical, what a pathetic nation we are. And it's just, I'm glad that every day with Trump, that was the only good thing about Trump, probably, that this facade of this civilized, like, unachievable dream for many people across the world, it's just, this was the last brick. I think no longer they can. I hope they stop lecturing the rest of the world about civility and democracy and all that. I hope so. I mean, yeah. I doubt it, but
No, exactly. No, you're 100% right. I mean, you get a star for that comment. Look, but yeah,
I want to clarify that I'm up, 4 people died, so I don't want to trivialize that. But if there is a silver lining, or that's yeah, I don't want to say I'm glad about what happened, but maybe there are some consequences that may be positive.
Yeah, and then I agree with that. Then the second argument, going through these a bit quickly, I mean, this again, Kyle also said with his new show with Crystal, saying, like, don't bring up, at least from what I understood, don't say, like, oh, the disenfranchised people stuff. Yes, what you were talking about earlier on, a lot of people were voting for Republicans, and white people have a lot of issues, and a lot of it has to do with disenfranchised people underlining economic issues. But I'm sure that a lot of people who really took part in the last bit of that protest that had to do with, storming the Capitol and all this. I mean, there were reports that there were millionaires and billionaires among them. I've seen other QAnon people get arrested. There's a lady who went nuts in Target. I don't know if anybody remembers. She was throwing masks around. Then they go to her house and arrest her. A very well-off person. So these people, I mean, that stormed, it wasn't, I'm sure some of them were in terrible situation, but it's not just the disenfranchised thing of people.
No. Disenfranchisement does not necessarily mean that you're poor. Disenfranchised means you're not represented. So I understand what you're saying. They're not, they're not these oppressed, toilers.
Or like the people who lost all their factory jobs that were sent to, They're not necessarily, yeah.
But they may feel alienated and disenfranchised for some, in my view, for some idiotic reason.
Yeah.
But they may be described. But you're right. By the way, great episode. That second episode of. I love their guest. I forgot his name, but he was a very intelligent.
Editor of the. How do you say
the
that?
Founder
Jacobin?
Jacobin.
Sorry, founder, editor. Yeah, Jacobin. No, that was super interesting. And then the last argument you hear about attack on democracy here and there. I never understand how, like, physical attacks on, like, a physical building is really amounts to attack on democracy. I mean, okay, the part where they were trying to have a revolution to happen, that part I understand. But, attack on democracy, I find is much more underlining things like, for instance, allowing people to donate as much as they want, corporations to donate and buy politicians, not hosting proper debates. That's more of attacking democracy than this. So I didn't, but this argument wasn't made too much.
That's more undermining democracy than this does. But I would say that this is an attack on a specific form of democracy, right? On an American system of political system. So I'm sure if you talk to the protesters or the rioters or whatever, they say that they are for democracy. They feel democracy is like they feel cheated, right? So I guess it's a attack on a group or on a specific system. But I'm not a big fan of democracy anyway, so I really couldn't care less.
But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it was really an attack on democracy. But yeah, fair enough with that point. Now I had a question for you. I don't really have a take on this. You know more, so let me know if you have any thoughts. Is it fair to compare in any way QAnon and the Tea Party movement from 2009?
I mean, not compare. I think they're continuation of the same, right? This is it's a bit of a tangent, but I was watching.
This is our last point, so feel free.
I was watching this great video there's a great YouTube channel called Wisecrack. They do philosophical takes on movies, TV shows, that type of media, that type of thing. And there's this theory of history that J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings writer, subscribed to, that everything is constantly getting worse. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do think that I think we go through different periods, and I think QAnon, Trump, that type of thing was a natural outgrowth of the Tea Party movement. So I don't think they're comparable. They're in a same continuation in a way. Kind of, again, this is somebody I mentioned before, Perry Anderson, the editor of the New Left Review. He has a great book called Indian Ideology, in which he argues that the Likud party, the right-wing party of Benjamin Netanyahu, and I forget the Indian Modi party, the very right-wing groups, these were the natural conclusion or natural, continuation of years of, nationalistic policies, and they came out of the people who they defeated. So now QAnon people, some of them are going completely crazy and attacking even original Tea Party members. But I think they are in the same continuation. I think, but to be honest, I haven't done very much academic research on the topic, so I may be completely wrong.
Yeah, no, it hasn't really come out much either, this comparison. It just kind of came to my mind, and with that worldview that you just mentioned, I mean, definitely applies here. I don't know if you can apply, historically and say things always get worse or whatever. But yeah, here, I mean, you can say, maybe you can say Tea Party is maybe worse than QAnon because of the control they eventually managed to exert, whereas QAnon are still outsiders very much.
QAnon just started as well, so they may get,
and they make less sense.
If you look at the American history during the last 40 years, you can basically, in my view, you can see how situation gets. Like, you got Reagan, who at least paid lip service to being a bit of a gentleman and all that, and then you get Bush's, and then you get Trump, and the level of intelligence, the level of present, all of it is deteriorating. And you can see the same with the Republican movement as a whole, I think.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Although you could perhaps argue that Bush was worse than Trump, given of the consequences of his action at the end, and him being able to actually follow through with a war and everything. But to
be fair, I think if Trump had an Iraq to attack, he would have, but he didn't have it, or a 9/11 to use as an excuse.
Yeah, it's just that his only thing was that, I mean, the Bush people could at least put together a fake campaign, and go around. His problem is that if he can't pound like on the moment right there, like by tomorrow, the day after, like he's forgotten about it and there's no momentum.
Yeah,
So he kind of has to restart again from
even
scratch.
doing evil takes some level of
No,
competency,
100%. I mean, imagine if he was competent enough to do everything that he had said. I
Wants
mean,
to, yeah,
yeah.
shit.
But okay, Sam. So let's switch gears now and move on to our second story for today. So the Guardian reported that Israeli airstrikes on East Syria killed 57 regime forces and allied Iran-backed fighters in the deadliest such strikes since the start of the conflict. A war monitoring group by the name of Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which we'll get into towards the end and talk about them a little bit, reported this just yesterday on Wednesday. So Sam, can you tell us a little bit, what have you heard, what has been reported so far?
To be honest, there is not much to add. The attack was at Deir al-Zor, I believe. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I believe Deir al-Zor area, town in Syria, eastern part of Syria. And nobody knows exactly how many people died, but yeah, between 40 to 50, they assume. It seems the attack killed mostly foreign fighters that worked with Syrian regime. That's been what's been reported. It hasn't been confirmed by Iran, which they say lost most people. Specifically, they talk about apparently there were people from Fatimiyun, what do you call them, legion or something. This is a foreign legion type thing of Iran, that they Fatimiyun is the group. It's mostly made up of Afghani people who are usually Shias, who either wanted to fight in Syria or for some financial reasons have agreed to fight in Syria. They are actually, I think, the largest Iranian-backed or Iranian-supported legion there. And recently, there's been a lot of media campaign sort of attacking them, especially in Afghanistan, that why these people should when they come back, are they loyal to Afghanistan, are they loyal to Iran or not. They had great relationship with the Iranian former Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. He had great relationship with this legion, so it seems that the attack hit them the hardest, and then Iranians, although Iran hasn't really even commented on the issue for now. At the same time, but yeah, that's what's actually happened. That's the news of it itself. Then we can get to analysis, perhaps.
Yeah, so I mean, based pretty much in the first sentence of the Guardian article, they also say regime forces and allied Iran-backed fighters. So far, I mean, they're kind of reporting that it was all them. And so just a little bit of context that I'll add to this and then throw it back to you. So this is not the first time that, of course, Israel has attacked targets in Syria since the start of civil war. And according to their own annual military report, they targeted 50 targets in 2020. So last year, targeted 50 targets. And the Syrian civil war now is entering its 10th year. It will have its anniversary shortly. It has so far killed just under 400,000 people, according to the only reports that we have, the only figures. This is probably a conservative estimate and essentially displaced half the population. So some of those who have been forced to leave the country, so they have become essentially refugees living either in Turkey or in Lebanon or in parts of Europe, and about the other half have been displaced internally within Syria. So they've had to flee their homes, and I wonder if there are any returns already being organized. And we're going to take the opportunity of the anniversary of the Syrian civil war to really dig into what's the status now. I mean, it's becoming a bit of a forgotten civil war, but forgotten war conflict right now. But my take is that it seems like the civil war aspect of it, I don't know what you think about this, Sam, is over pretty much, but the proxy war seems to clearly continue. I mean, if Israel has this many targets to hit in Syria right now, that means there are the proxy aspect of it is still going on.
Sure, sure. Just some more details about the specific attack. I want to say that the Al Mayadin, which is the Iranian-funded channel for Arab speakers, they claim that the area was emptied out and there was no casualties before Israelis bombarded these regions. Apparently, 4 places were hit, and uh, yeah, I think this attack is, to be honest, the context for this attack is largely the fact that Trump and Israelis and Arab nations are trying to make Iran start a war with them, and then they're gonna attack Iran basically. At the same time, they're sending a message that even if Joe Biden comes into office, Israel is independently gonna defend itself, because none of the Arab nations have any capability to, do any military strike or anything like that. So I think that's the context of this specific attack. But in terms, yeah, I mean, Syria, you can argue there is no longer Syria. Like, there are huge segments of eastern Syria controlled by Kurds and, who are American allies. There are certain small parts in the north that has been taken over by Turkey. Israel has, officially annexed the Golan Heights now, and they continuously, I mean, they haven't done it much recently, but they've been continuously hitting so-called Iranian targets within Syria, and Hezbollah targets. So, Syria, just like to be honest, it's quite interesting. For the last 3,000 years, Syria has been the place where East and West fight their proxy wars. So it seems that it's reverted back to its old position of being the center of the proxy war between East and Western powers, if we can describe them as Eastern and Western powers.
Yeah, I just wanted to go over something that caught my attention. So now I was reading the Guardian article. Everything that they mentioned, their reporting, is based on information that they received from the famous Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. So this is a UK-based information office founded in 2006. So I didn't know that. So it was actually founded 5 years before the Syrian civil war, but since then it has purely focused on that. I mean, according to Wikipedia. And so, I mean, I was blown away that it was still them, and it just reminded me that everything that we know from kind of the killing and the casualties from the Syrian civil war literally comes from this one organization, which is apparently pretty much like one man, one guy in London, and maybe he has like a few people helping now, and he has like a network of people in Syria that he's receiving all this information. And they have been frequently quoted, as Wikipedia says, by major news outlets since the beginning, about daily numbers of deaths from all sides in the conflict. But they were really originally described as being pro-opposition and anti-Assad. However, like for instance, the reporting here is basically on attacks that were carried out on Assad, pro-regime kind of people. So, I mean, although I think they've had that label, they have, it seems like, reported on both sides. But this is very interesting that I don't know if there are other sources that people are familiar with who are like really doing the grassroots part of the reporting before it gets written by news agencies in the West, but it seems like it's still just coming from this one organization. And for instance, in other countries, the UN might generate a lot of information that will be seen as legitimate, but the UN's role in Syria has been extremely limited, because since the Assad regime was never discredited, well, internationally they remained as, what's the word? It's escaping me right now. The recognized government, right? The legitimate government. So because legitimate government throughout the civil war. So because of that, they had a lot of control over the UN and really kept the UN to a more limited role as they had even in Yemen. So you never hear any reporting on casualties from IC coming from any of the UN agencies, but all coming from this one Syrian Observatory for Human Rights.
Yet, to be honest, Syrian Human Observatory and many other organizations, they all seem to have a somewhat pro-opposition bias. But then again, you have places like Al Mayadin, the Iranian-backed news channel, and they have such an obvious pro-Assad bias that you are forced to basically go with them because they seem to at least cover it up a little bit better. So, but yeah, getting real news out of Syria has been a huge issue, as it's been, as was famously the case with the gas attacks. That was, at first they said it was Syrian government, then there were clear evidence that it wasn't. People should check out the Gray Zone, by the way, for more details about that. So yeah, the facts and fictions in a war miles away is just they're gonna mix.
Yeah, that's so true. And do you remember when things were going down in Libya, how much coverage and access they had there? And the beginning of the Syrian civil war, nobody, major, smaller one, nobody had any access whatsoever. But okay, Sam, so that was it. We were just going to do a two-story episode today, but there's been some breaking news that have just emerged regarding the whole Iran and South Korea issue. So can you just quickly tell us what has emerged so far?
Quite interestingly, I was just looking at the news. It has emerged that South Korea has officially requested Qatar to act as a go-between or act as a mediator between Iran and South Korea to help to free its ship and its crew from Iran. Apparently the first deputy of the South Korean foreign minister, Mr. Choi Jong-kun, if I'm not mistaken, he went to Doha and he met with high-ranking officials from Qatari government and officially requested their hand in playing a mediator role between Iran and South Korea, which is quite interesting. And Qatar has, it's important to mention, Qatar has relatively good relations with Iran compared to all other Arab nations, probably one of, except Oman, probably one of the better ones. It has significant economic ties with Iran. They share the gas field, southern Pars gas field in the Persian Gulf. So, it could be an important step. They have a lot of money, so they may be able to facilitate some money going to Iran without because the problem with South Koreans have is that they can't do the banking transfer because of American sanctions apparently. So Qataris may be able to pay cash. So who knows?
No, that's actually extremely interesting. I find that they went to Qatar, and we have actually talked about Qatar and the Iran relations and all this in just the video that we uploaded 2 days ago. But just the background, Sam, in case some of our viewers are not familiar, what's just the small background between the South Korea-Iran issue?
A couple of weeks ago, Iran seized the South Korean ship, because it claimed it was polluting the Persian Gulf with 20 of its crew members. Well, it had 20 people as crew. Officially, the reason given was the pollution, but most analysts and kind of almost directly the government spokesperson connected to the about more than $7 billion of funds that South Korea owes to Iran for oil and gas, but it cannot transfer to Iran, it claims, due to banking sanctions by the US. But Iran is getting very tired, and Iran is getting very annoyed, so they seized most analysts claim Iran seized it because of that. And now it's kind of, although, for example, a deputy foreign minister of Iran said that they shouldn't politicize this issue. This is a legal issue, and judiciary is reviewing it right now. It has nothing to do with politics. But then again, everything has to do with politics, so who knows? So yeah, that's the background. Sorry, I should have said it first, but I thought I'd give you the headline first and foremost.
It's all good. Okay, so let's see what the Qataris can pull off here and what happens, and we'll come back to you if there are any further developments. But okay, that's it. Any final words, Sam? Anybody you want to thank? Your parents, the government, anyone? Your local.
I thank nobody. I did it all by myself. Fuck you. Yeah.
Okay.
So but thanks for listening. That's helps.
please let us know if in the comments if we missed something, if you don't agree with any of our takes. In some of our other videos, there were a bunch of comments, so we actually addressed them in a separate video. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and please like and subscribe if you like this kind of content, and we'll be back with more.
Thank you.